Marcus never wanted trouble. He wasn't the kind of man who looked for fights or stirred up disputes. He simply wanted peace. When he bought the small two-story house on Maple Ridge Drive, he pictured it as a quiet haven where his daughter, Amaya, could ride her bike without fear, where the sound of his saxophone drifting from the porch in the evenings would be met with neighborly nods, not complaints. But from the very first week, he realized the neighborhood wasn't built for peace, at least not for him. She came knocking 3 days after he moved in. Linda Prescott, president of the Homeowners Association, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp like she had a personal stake in keeping every blade of grass lined. She introduced herself with a practiced smile, one that never quite touched her eyes. "You'll find," she said, looking past him at his yard rather than at his face, "that we have very high standards around here. Some folks a broken bar slip up. But we don't tolerate violations for long." Marcus extended his hand politely. "Good to meet you. I'll do my best to keep everything tidy." She hesitated before shaking it, as though even that was a concession. Her eyes dropped to the painted wind chime hanging from his porch, a gift from his late wife, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "That," she said, "may not comply. I'll have to check." It was small things at first. A note slipped into his mailbox about the shade of his porch light being too yellow. A letter citing his lawn as slightly overgrown when it was barely an inch longer than the manicured yards around him. Complaints about the noise level when he played Courtroom at sunset, even though the decibel level was no louder than a passing car. To Marcus, it was clear, Linda didn't want him there. Neighbors seemed torn. A few offered polite smiles when he walked Amaya to school, but most avoided eye contact. He felt the weight of being watched, every move catalogued, every harmless detail magnified into a potential violation. Amaya noticed too. "Daddy," she whispered once, "why does that lady always stare at us like she's mad?" He bent down and kissed her forehead. "Sometimes people don't understand us, baby. But we don't let that change who we are." Still, the tension tightened like a rope. By autumn, Linda's hostility was no longer veiled. At an home meeting, she pointed to him as an example of non-compliance, citing his choice of mailbox as unapproved. When he tried to speak in his defense, she cut him off sharply. "Rules are rules, Mr. Lewis. If you can't follow them, perhaps you chose the wrong neighborhood." The word "wrong" hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He felt every pair of eyes shift uneasily, but no one spoke up. Not one. And then came the night of the fire. It was late October, the air sharp with the scent of dry leaves. Marcus had just tucked Amaya into bed, reading her favorite story until her eyelids fluttered shut. He went downstairs, poured himself a cup of tea, and sat by the window with his saxophone resting nearby. The world outside was still, the streetlights humming softly. He thought maybe, just maybe, peace would finally find him that night. But then the smell hit him, a sharp, chemical, wrong. He frowned, set down his cup, and stepped onto the porch. The wind carried it stronger now, gasoline. His pulse quickened. He looked around, and for a fleeting moment, he saw a shadow moving near the side of the house. A figure, bent low, clutching something metallic. The glint of a gas can under the pale light. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, his voice slicing through the night. The figure jerked upright, froze for half a second, then bolted into the darkness. He barely had time to register the shape, but his gut told him what his eyes already knew. The outline, the stride, it was Linda. Before he could chase, a crackling sound snapped his attention back. Flames licked up the side of his house, quick as a snake, greedy as hunger. Within seconds, the wood siding was alive with fire. Marcus's chest seized. "Amaya!" He sprinted inside, smoke already seeping through the lower floor. The heat rose fast, suffocating, curling into his lungs. He stumbled up the stairs, coughing, calling her name. Her frightened voice answered, small and trembling, "Daddy." He burst into her room, scooped her into his arms, and wrapped her in a blanket. "Close your eyes, baby. Hold tight to me." Together, they pushed through the thickening smoke, Marcus shielding her with his body. The flames roared louder, devouring photographs, curtains, memories. His throat burned, his eyes stung, but he forced himself forward. At the front door, the fire cut them off, an orange wall of heat. He spun, searching, and darted toward the back. He kicked open the kitchen door, stumbled onto the lawn, and fell to his knees with Amaya in his arms. She coughed violently, tears streaking her soot-stained face. He held her close, rocking her, whispering, "It's okay, you're safe, Daddy's here." But his eyes were locked on the inferno that had once been their home, flames clawing at the sky. Everything he had built, every dream, reduced to crackling ash. The fire trucks arrived minutes later, sirens wailing, lights flashing red and blue across the cul-de-sac. Neighbors gathered in clusters, murmuring, some with genuine concern, others with barely concealed curiosity. Among them, Marcus's gaze caught Linda's. She stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But her eyes gleamed with something he could not mistake. Not fear. Not shock. Satisfaction. The firefighters worked furiously, but the house was already gone. Only blackened beams remained, collapsing under their own weight. A lifetime of photos, Amaya's drawings pinned to the fridge, his wife's keepsakes vanished in smoke. Marcus held Amaya tighter, his jaw clenched, tears cutting through the suit on his cheeks. A police officer approached him gently. "Sir, we'll need a statement. Do you have any idea how this started?" Marcus opened his mouth, but the words stuck. He thought of the gas can, the shadow, Linda's unmistakable frame. He thought of how she would deny it, how she would twist it into another complaint about him. And he thought of the silence of the neighbors, their unwillingness to see what was right in front of them. But then he looked down at Amaya, her small body trembling against his, and something hardened in him. He would not let this pass. He would not let her grow up believing that silence was stronger than justice. "Yes," he said, voice low but steady. "I know exactly who did this." The officer raised his brow. "Who?" Marcus's eyes shifted back to Linda, who was pretending to console a neighbor, her hand resting theatrically on her chest. "Her," he said. "It was her." The officer followed his gaze, then scribbled in his notepad, his expression tight. "We'll look into it. I promise." But Marcus knew promises were fragile. He knew systems often faltered when power and privilege walked into the room. He knew Linda had lived in that neighborhood for 20 years, had friends on the council, had the confidence of someone who believed rules bent for her. Still, he had seen her. He had smelled the gasoline. He had carried his child through the flames she lit. That truth burned brighter than any fire. As the night stretched on, the firefighters packed up their hoses, the crowd dispersed, and only the skeletal remains of his house smoldered in the dark. Marcus stood there, arms wrapped around his daughter, watching smoke curl into the stars. His lungs ached, his body trembled with exhaustion, but his mind was ablaze with resolve. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The neighborhood might try to forget, to sweep it under whispers and paperwork, but he wouldn't. He would carry the image of Linda's silhouette in the firelight into every meeting, every deposition, every courtroom. He would not let his daughter believe that people like Linda could burn down homes and walk away smiling. As he finally led Amaya to the temporary shelter a friend had offered, he whispered to her, "We lost the house, baby. But we didn't lose each other. And we won't lose the truth." And in the silence that followed, with the charred smell still clinging to their clothes, Marcus made a promise not just to his daughter, but to himself. He would see Linda answer for what she had done, no matter how long it took.